After fully completing Donkey Kong Bananza and collecting all of the 777 Banandium gems, I can safely say this game is enormous, with tons of things to talk about and look at, which is great for fans, and even better for YouTubers like myself. I felt like this is a great opportunity to continue a series of videos I've made throughout my career, looking at the hardest of some things. Where in this particular title, I want to showcase the top 20 hardest bananas that you can come across, explaining what makes them this way, and where you can find them. Oh yeah, and before we get started, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet, then please subscribe to my channel, hitting that bell to stay notified when I upload new videos. Coming in at number 20, as the first banana we're going to look at in this video, is one called Treasured Memory, found in the Nostalgia Country Challenge course of the Hilltop Lair. In this neat 2D throwback level, you can find this banana if you climb up the wall above the starting area, where you'll come across DK's house, very similar to what it looks like in the Donkey Kong Country entry for the SNES. Now, I had an inkling that this was a thing, as it was something that you could do in the first level of that game, where you're given an extra life balloon for your curiosity. Here instead, coming across a Banandium gem, which is just a nice touch. If you were a fan of those original games and already knew this secret, then you probably found this pretty quickly. Otherwise, I could see newer fans completely missing this one, as it's in a tough to get to spot in a very non-evident area. In the 19th spot is a secret banana found in the Ice Swerve Switcheroo Challenge course of the Resort Lair, titled Shaved Ice Master, needing to use the switcheroo panels to guide the candies to the goal, in what's an actually pretty tough puzzle. It took me a lot of trial and error to figure out how to get the shaved ice to move properly through these things, as in many spots I'd make a mistake and have to backtrack and fix things and repeat the process and go over until they finally would go in and I could get the banana. At number 18 is a banana that isn't here because it requires you to do a hard challenge, but is here because of the requirements needed to unlock it, called the Sated Ingot Isle Growstone. What makes this one so crazy is to unlock it you have to beat the main game, which took me around 25 hours, so that's quite a while. And then on top of that, you need a whopping 10,000 gold, which is a lot, especially at that point in the game where you might not have the proper outfits or skill trees upgraded to help you out. I'll talk about different strategies to collect a ton of gold a bit later in this video. Just know trying to get this amount at first is a big feat. At 17, I want to look at the Ostrich Bananza Free Climbing Challenge Room, which you can find in the Forbidden Lair, as this is an area that gave me problems as the control of the ostrich don't seem to work well in this environment. It took me several attempts before I understood that it's easier to just slide on the wall for a bit than to jump back and forth between them, which for some reason is a lot riskier, and you'll just easily lose your height and get electrocuted. Also, I kept dying during the lava platform changing section as I couldn't get used to the timing or camera angle, which has caused me to touch every hazard around me way more than I wanted to. Up next is the secret and solitary banana, found in the jail section of the Groove Lair, being only difficult to get if you're trying to go for it when you first come across it during the story. Otherwise, things are made easier for you if you return later, which is a bit of a letdown. During that part of the game when you initially come across this room, you have no access to your Bananzas, and are also unable to transform the gold around you into the more bouncy material. So I had to rely on stacking up dirt mounds, then pulling off a tough jump to even get to it. However, if you return later, then you could just turn the gold into that bouncy material and dive bounce here, or just use the Snake Bananza's charge jump to reach it. This is a bit of a cop-out, but I got it the first way and that's how it's etched in my mind, so, you know, whatever. In the 15th spot is the super hidden banana that can be found in the Bramble Country Challenge sub-area of the Forest Lair, needing to manipulate yourself within the barrels to find the one that will send you to the spot it's located. It's already tough enough to navigate through this 2D environment based on some of the hardest Donkey Kong Country 2 stages, but you also have to worry about this hidden banana that's really tough to find, which just adds another layer to things. All you really need to do is exit the barrel here, which really is thinking outside of the box, as you know, you think there's just a direct route to it, but that's not always the case in this game. One challenge room that caused me to die a few times is the Crossing Through Crosshairs one, found near the Gong of the Junction Lair, needing to progress through it, all while dodging and using the blast from the laser-guided cannons. I really struggled at first to understand how to avoid such devastating attacks, especially as you also have to traverse on moving platforms, so it's not like you can be patient. Something that's made way harder without using the ostrich's glide ability that keeps you in the air for just a bit longer. In the end, I did get a hang of things, but not after losing a lot of gold in the process. And I wanted to know if this one gave you guys problems, so leave a comment below if that's the case. At the lucky number 13 spot, I want to look at the entirety of the Kong Elders Rehearsal Hall of the Lagoon Lair. The easiest of the rehearsal challenges in the century, but it still can offer you a few problems. This one's all about understanding how to use the Bananza's transformation to defeat certain enemies rather than focusing on time limits or tough platforming, where you'll come across some of the most armored up foes that you'll see, which normally would be impossible to beat. There's really only a few spots where I had any slip-ups, but otherwise it's pretty doable, especially in comparison to what we're going to see coming up. At number 12 is the Thorny Hill Buzzer Beater Banana, which is a time-based one found within the Thorny Hill Speed Surf Challenge room of the Hilltop Lair. Here there are really two main bananas that you can get, where the first is just gotten normally by beating the level by surfing on a rock to the end, and the second is gotten by doing all of this with 20 seconds or more left on the clock. I did not find this easy to do at all, especially earlier on in my playthrough, as I wasn't quite comfortable with the controls yet, and because of this, continuously fell off the sides into the void, having to start over. After you do get a hang of things, it actually becomes very fun. Wishing in the end that you had more of these to do, as it reminds me a lot of the rolling gizmo galaxies from Super Mario Galaxy. Up next at 11, I want to mention a few of the tougher shifty smash bananas that I had problems with, especially without the use of your Bananza powers. These include the Rising Tower one, where you need to use the snake to initially get up to the top, then transform into your Kong Bananza form and smash through the usually indestructible layers. The splashy ancient one in the zebra rehearsal area, where I didn't realize you could just run up the tower in a spiral formation, as I tried a whole bunch of different methods at first and almost gave up until I realized what to do. The inhale and destroy one, that even with the elephant ability I almost failed. The quick and nimble one, that has super fast moving platforms that you really need to focus on to clear. And finally, in my opinion, the hardest, in the damp dodge and dash one, found again within the zebra rehearsal area, having to wait until the laser finds you and shoots you to create platforms to move forward. Something I struggled with at first, as I would constantly run out of time. At number 10 is a secret banana of the Forest Lair's Ostrich Rehearsal Hall called Face the Fire and Lasers, needing to dodge those hazards in mid-air on your way to get the Banandium Gem. For some unknown reason, I just could not navigate through these tough obstacles without touching one of these deadly things and falling out of the sky, needing to try all over again. To be honest, I might just be crazy and this is probably easy and I'm overthinking things here, so if that is the case, then please scream at me and bring me back to reality in the comments below. At number 9 is the fast-paced banana of the Freestyle Bananas City Smash Challenge in the Feast Lair, having to clear the building of its innards with an astonishing 20 seconds left on the clock. I really truly struggled with this, even with a souped up skill tree for the Elephant Bananza, needing to find the best route possible so you can do maximum damage in the least amount of time. Now, apparently there's a way to cheese this by preemptively destroying parts of the building from outside of the area, which doesn't trigger the time to start, but still counts towards the end goal. Although the fact that people went out of their way to figure this out proves that this must be hard. In the 8th spot is the grueling, dangerous desert fast finish banana, where you have to finish the last part of the zebra rehearsal hall with 20 seconds left on the clock. This is not easy to do, as it's a very long experience where you have to utilize your charge ability or risk losing too much time, having to deal with obstacles like different types of walls, including enemy ones that want to stomp you, and deadly hazards that you have to skillfully move around. Also, in this zebra charging state, things get really hard to control, where in several instances I literally just flew off the sides of the course into the void, needing to try all over again. At number 7, I want to look at the entirety of the Ostrich Rehearsal Hall in the Forest Lair, needing to use that Bananza's glide ability, as there are many sections where you have to pass over voids and make it safely to whatever refuge you can find. Here you'll come across incredibly tough sections, which include passing through floating rings of lava that can trip you up as at times they move erratically, an entire part where you have to use the bouncy substance to your advantage, crossing large swaths of electrical fields that if stood on too long will hurt you, as well as having to use them to platform up a tower, and also needing to bounce off of moving ones to reach an air jet high up in the air, which is where I died most of the time. And finally, needing to glide all the way to the end without getting hit by any enemies or the myriad of lasers wanting to harm you. You really need your skill tree powered up in favor of the ostrich, as otherwise when you try to glide through some of the longer sections, you'll just fall into the void and will be unable to complete it. Coming in at number 6 is the Elephant Rehearsal Hall that mixes tough platforming with some of the most complex problem solving in this game. Where again, having your skill tree completed will help you a lot, as otherwise you'll definitely struggle. In the first section, you'll really have to ration the throwable rocks you have in your inventory, as you have to use them to complete platforms and defeat enemies to move forward. Although, if you do run out, you have to go back to the start and suck up more. It's also best for you to resuck the platforms that you just crossed and created, as it will ensure that you're good to go when fighting the Trepantuloids. Next, you go to a part where you have to figure out which substance is best to use to tackle whichever enemy or puzzle that's in front of you. At times, being able to trigger a switch, which turns one substance into another, which really makes things interesting at certain points. Now, the final part is unfortunately the easiest, and just involves cooling down a room of lava using water, then grabbing a chunk of rainbow stone to float upwards and make it to the goal. Overall, it's still hard, don't get me wrong, it's just that final part is the only reason why this doesn't make the top 5. One Bananza rehearsal that does make the top 5 is the snake one of the Radiance Lair. Having to go through a series of vertical platforming challenges that at times stumped me so much that I actually was tempted to use a guide. I think for me it has something to do with how weird it feels to climb on the walls in the snake form, while also having to use the charge jump ability, especially during the moving wall portions, as I felt like I was making progress upwards, just to get forced off the wall for some reason, and fall to the bottom in disgrace. I also really struggled during the part where the platforms are falling downwards, with parts of them being electrified, and parts being areas where you need to break through, having to be both speedy and efficient. Sideways rolling at times in mid-air so you can platform horizontally a bit quicker. I spent way longer than I'd like to admit trying to do this, as again, something feels awkward about using this ability on a wall, while also having to deal with the weird camera angle. The last part was also a head scratcher for me, as you have to deal with the giant walloid foe, which at first glance looks impossible. But I totally forgot about the glare ability, which slows down things, so you shouldn't have a problem here if you use it right. Once you beat the game, you can then return to the caved-in Ingot Isle and talk to Cranky Kong, and he'll offer to build you something special for 5,000 gold, which is what we're going to look at number 4 in the Battle Rush Challenge. Here you have to go through several rooms of different types of bad guys, each tougher than the next, needing to use whichever Bananza form that works best in each encounter to help you complete each one as you're on a time crunch. Oh yeah, and if you at all fail, or die, or run out of time, then you have to start all the way from the beginning. Something super annoying, so you have to be careful, or else this will take you a lot of time to complete. After you clear that, you can then return to Cranky Kong again, and he will build you what's coming in at number 3 in the Boss Rush Challenge. Here you have to go through 5 entire boss battles without dying, which includes the Lava Spewing Inflamite, a much harder version of the Abracadabra, I think that's how you say it, I'm not sure. A really hard fight against the Blusterwing, as it takes place in an area where lightning will strike you periodically and the water around you will electrify. The Muckety Muck, which is annoying as you have limited resources and it moves very fast. And lastly, a souped up version of the Stomping Clomper. But I didn't find it too hard, as there's tons of gold that you can use to explode its tougher outer shell. I again died a lot during this one. And I'd love to know if you think this one's harder or the battle one's harder in the comments below. In the penultimate spot of this video is the final thing Cranky Kong will make for you in the Ingot Isle lair, in the giant golden DK statue. But there's a catch, as it costs a whopping 120,000 gold. At first this task looks absolutely monumental, as I was only collecting a few thousand gold in some of the spots in the game where you can get the most. But I found that this is a lot easier if you level up DK's Banandium chip Bolo, which increases the amount of gold chips you collect, as well as making Pauline wear her gold mining gear, which doubles the amount of gold you get when you're collecting it. With these equipped, it took me a much shorter time than I expected, and soon enough I was able to unlock this majestic Easter egg, collecting the gem on top of the statue titled the Best of the Bunch. Now, I get that this doesn't sound difficult enough to be in the second spot of this video, but you still have to pay for both the battle and boss rush areas, plus beat the base game to even get here. So I think you can all agree this deserves to come in pretty low on this list. Before we get to my number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions. At number 1, as the hardest banana of the entirety of Donkey Kong Bananza, is the one you get after completing the Harmonious Rehearsal. Considered to be the hardest level of the game, on par with Super Mario Odyssey's A Long Journey's End. In the first part of this massive experience with no checkpoints, you have to use the ostrich's glide ability to go down horizontal and vertical corridors that are covered in spiky vines. At times, you need to use your egg bomb attacks to clear things away to move forward. Before you leave the start, I like to restore my Bananza by eating the fruit, just in case you get hung up somewhere and need to move more slowly than you anticipated and have to reactivate your ability. Next is a part where you have to move through tight corridors where there's a lot of spikes and dozens of spike balls that are launched towards you, needing to almost predict where the safe areas will be, which isn't easy as nothing at all is predictable or uniform. The most infuriating part has to be where you're forced to ride the glowstone and use parts of it to break walls and defeat enemies. But if you use too much of it, then it'll create holes in what you're standing on, which then makes this part a lot tougher to traverse through. Also, I lost a lot of lives/gold during this section where you have to surf grind on the rails and jump around the enemies that are coming towards you. Something that you do nowhere else in the game, so it just feels weird when you're forced to do it in this part, and led to me failing a few times before I got the hang of it. Lastly, things are capped off in a 2D platforming section where you have to avoid several annoying barrels and at times have to do this over water until you reach the finish, completing what's hands down the hardest challenge of the game. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course, please subscribe to my channel. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!